Okay, to assemble this film advanced stuff, start with the plain disc. This gear goes on next. Now, take note of which way the teeth are facing. That should fit over that shaft with only a minimal amount of push. Of course, it's not wanting to. Let's try its mate. These little gears are identical, but one's been on there. That one goes on much easier. They're identical, but one's flipped. Alright, so that looks okay. Put that on there. Another one of these plain discs. Then put this gear on. This has got the teeth going the other direction. Alright. Then this disc with the little raised piece in the centre. Raised piece up. And then the advance knob. I'm just rotating that. I'm holding the sprocket with my thumb. And I'm doing that up. And basically that's just pulling those gears down into place. I'll tighten that up more by putting a spanner on there, a wrench, and doing it up tighter. See if I can get this focused a bit better, eh? Okay, let's get the wrench on there. And this is a left-hand thread, of course. Okay, so that's pulled down tight. Right, I'll just unscrew that now. We've got the gear screwed down tight where it needs to be, the little gears, and we can put the control stuff in place. Okay, one piece after another. So, to start with, we have a little plain washer, a thin washer. Sits on that post there. Just give this little wipe of synthetic grease. That's the lower of the two arms. That rides against the lower of those two wheels in there. We have a spacer. And we have the other arm, which rides against the upper of the two gears. If I take that shield off the top, you can see how it engages with the teeth there. Now there's a spring that keeps these pieces in contact with the wheels. It's this spring here, which screws into the top plate at that point. See if I can get that in place. Okay, get that spring engaged against the boss on the underside of this lever and on the top surface of the underside lever. That's looking good. Get that screw done up. Let's put the knob on there just to tidy things up. Stop things trying to pop out of place. Both of these arms should be sprung loaded, should move reasonably freely. The top one's behaving itself, the bottom one I'm not so sure about. We'll check that in a second. Right, this is the lever that works against our frame counter. I'll put that in place, and then there's a single screw that holds this in position. That's everything sitting in position at that point. Our frame counter disc has to be fitted, and we've got the little arm here which moves the frame counter as the works with the other stuff. So let's get all this other stuff in position next, I think. I may have to put my finder in position shortly, but let's just see if we can do it this way. Alright, we'll start with this little wheel. Just applying a bit of synthetic grease. A little post on it should be pointing up. That couples with our sprocket shaft there. We have this little star-shaped washer. It sits on the top. On top of that, just give this a wipe with some synthetic grease as well. This little piece sits on top. Pull back that lever. That's fouling it, is it? That's better. Check that that's seated. We have this star-shaped washer arrangement on the top, and then the counter disc, and I'm just going to wipe the bottom of the counter disc with a bit of synthetic grease there. That's going to sit on the top like that, and its fixing screw goes right through that lot. That's looking okay. Just check that everything appears to move. Yeah, that's all looking pretty promising, to tell the truth. So everything's moving there as it should do. I think I'm going to have to put that finder in place because it has the return spring for the arm and this piece here. And we've got to get all that in position. This is the return spring for the frame counter, and that's what we need to put in next. There's a single screw that holds that in place. It's a flathead screw. It doesn't particularly look like it belongs there, but it belongs there. So I'll get that screw in place. Then this base plate goes on for the viewfinder. This plate goes over the top. And that's held in place by two raised head black screws. Now they're only black to stop them scattering light in the finder and reducing the contrast of your finder, really. They just sit there like that. And the rest of the finder goes on over the top. And we can deal with that next. We don't need to deal with it immediately. Just deciding what else I should have done first. We've got our reverse lever and things here need to go on. This lever here Just put a little bit of synthetic grease on that, slide that into position. Let it drop in under that. That lever shouldn't be sitting behind there. Let's get that back out the way. That's better. Slide that over its post, and there's a shoulder screw that holds that in position. There are two shoulder screws, and I'm reasonably sure that they're identical. Let's get this one in here and see how it behaves. That doesn't want to run in. Let's try its mate. Can't say that that's looking very exciting. That action seems a little bit stiff to me. It may loosen up. This will be pushed by this lever here, which you press. No, it's loosened up. I probably had too much paint on that post there. Let's put a little touch of grease on there. There's no disadvantage in that being a little bit stiff. No, that'll be fine. It's working nicely. Right. The little reverse lever which goes up here, we've hidden our access to that, so let's remove this stuff so we can see it. That sits in here. I'll give that a wipe of synthetic grease through the centre. Just the barest wipe. And we'll pop that shoulder screw in there. It does seem a little bit tight. I'm not sure why that should be. It's moving nicely now. Let's leave that there. This little lever, of course, has to couple here. And that sits like this. I can find its fixing screw. Right, well, that lever hooked into its spring, well, it was. Let's get that screw in there first and then get this lever hooked into its spring. Whoops, you're not seeing much because I'm not seeing much. That's better. It's a shoulder screw. Now I've got to get this spring under here, hooked onto that arm, like that. And you can see that as I move this, it moves the frame counter 1 digit each time. So that is pretty much the Film Advanced stuff in place. You're turning the take-up spool. The film is rotating the sprocket shaft as you go, which rotates this wheel under here. When the notch drops in and allows this arm to drop in, it locks the take-up spool. When you press, after you've taken your photo, you press the frame counter, the lever across, it lifts the arm out of the way, and then you can roll on for your next exposure. When you reach the end of the film, you press your reverse lever across, pulls this out of engagement here, lifts this out of engagement, allows the take-up spool to revolve backwards, allows the sprocket shaft to revolve backwards. And when you load your film again and you press this lever, it shifts the reverse lever back out of the way, and we're back where we started. Okay, so that part's all looking good. It's working correctly. Check my screws. I can take this knob off now because I want to get the top cover on shortly, but I also need to assemble the finder. Here are the finder components: front glass, rear glass, a little space that holds it in place, and of course the top cover that they all sit inside. The 2 screws here hold the finder to the top of the camera on the base of the finder that we've already put in place. I'll have to clean that glass up before we go any further. So assembling the finder once you have your components clean is only marginally complicated. Basically this is going to drop into there. Our rear glass here has to drop in at the same time. Now this is convex on one face and flat or slightly concave on the other. Now the convex surface goes inwards, and I've got to see if I can get this lot all pressed in together all at the same time. Nope, it's fallen in there now. That's looking promising. And that was it. Now to fit that to the top of the camera. And take our finder. I'm just checking that I didn't manage to put any extra smears on there fighting that glass in. It drops on over the top like this. There's 2 screws, one from each side. This one's easy enough to get to typically. This one here is a little bit more awkward. You're working over those brackets. You can see one there. Let's see if I can get that screw in there. Don't bother doing the screws up tight. Get them in place first. You can tighten them up afterwards. And one on the inside here to do too. We have to pull that lever across to clear the space for that so I can see it. That's better. I don't think we're focused particularly well, but that's probably as good as I'm going to get. Okay, so I've got both screws in position. I'll just pull that rewind up so I can get to it easier. Tighten those screws up. That's our finder in place. So it means that we can put the top cover in place. Just sits on there like that. It's held in place with a single raised head screw. I can get the screw to start. I was probably a bit heavy-handed when I was throwing the paint around, and the threads are probably clogged. Okay, so that's in. Here's the advance knob, and I will want to put a spanner, a wrench, on the flats on the top of that advance to hold that in place while I do that up tight. Now we've got the body pretty much complete. As I roll that sprocket shaft over as I'm moving this, it locks the film advance. We would take our photo, press the lever across to take our next photo, which releases the film advance and allows us to roll on to the second shot. And so on. So that's all looking useful. I can see that the paint on the arrow there, markings on both my advance and my rewind, are pretty much gone. So I will fill those with some black paint to bring those markings back to life. I put both of those knobs in the ultrasonic cleaner because they were pretty scungy. It might not have been the best thing, the cleverest thing I did that day. Here, that marking's as good as gold now, no problems at all. Just use a paint stick to deal with that, one of the ones made for touching up paint loss on cars.